Yeah, my name is Marcel from Drunen. I work for Borealis data center since April this year. Before that, I used to work for Dell, and I was leading the HPC and AI technical pre-sales team. So my people helped Dr. Kalisha, also left. Oh, there he is back. Yeah, so some of my people helped Paul building his system. I must admit that most of my role there was just making sure that they were comfortable and step aside. I still have contact with those people because I learned a lot from Paul and Will and others here. I intend to do that still. Yeah, so the title of my presentation will be Carbon-Free Colocation, what's happening, what's stopping you. I can rush through a lot of this, but I made sure that I made my key points in the first slide. You can see that Borealis actually also employs handsome people, which has to do with me now. And on the bottom is what I think Mike already talked about, carbon footprint on Iceland. It's as low as 0.3 grams per kilowatt. I will have a slide about that later. We're trying to get that even lower. The POE that we have now in our systems in Iceland is quite low. I will explain later why. But that's mainly for the air-cooled stuff that we have there. Part of the pedigree of Borealis is that we used to be a Bitcoin mining facility, right? And those were largely air-cooled systems that were using the cheap and stable energy of Iceland, and also the cooling is free. I'll have a slide later why it's almost free. It's 100% renewable energy, electricity. There is a difference between electricity and energy. So if somebody claims that a certain part of the energy of a country is renewable, do realize that the electricity that's renewable, and it doesn't count for, well, there's still cars that using gas. Obviously, those have to be converted to electricity for the next decades, right? So we're not out of the woods by any means. So the other key point that we have got certified operations. I'll talk about some ISO certs that we have later. And Iceland and Finland, where we have the data centers, are the safest countries in the world. I was trying to ask ChatGPT how often, for instance, in Iceland people are killed. There's about 1 murder per year. There have been many years without murders. I think there's one incident where the Icelandic police threw a gun in the last century or something. It's a bit different than the neighborhood that I live. Okay, so you also see that we have more handsome people. Half our staff is women. We also managed to get 2 Dutch people on the team. Both are called Marcel. And most of the men have beards. The women that we have in the company are mostly in the non-technical roles. There's one engineer, that's a woman, and the rest work in finance, chief of staff, compliance. But we're working on that. It's not going quite fast, but okay. So these are our places where we have our campuses, 3 on Iceland, 1 in Finland. For the Finland campus, we've got quite an easy marketing slogan. There's a marketing slogan, and it's the same campus as where Lumi is. I think most of us know Lumi. That's the Finnish supercomputer. To put things in perspective, we are working on Lumi on behalf of Dell, and we obviously lost that opportunity to HPE. Where's HPE? Yeah, you're there. You guys move. Oh.
It moves about a lot.
Yeah. You need some movement, right? As we discussed this morning. Yeah, so it's the same campus as Lumi. So that means that all academics that don't have the capacity and use Lumi, well, they don't have the argumentation like the latency is too big, or I cannot store my data there. Well, you're using Lumi anyway. So, so that's the marketing slogan there. Then on Iceland, we've got 3 different campuses. People always ask me, do you have a campus near the volcanoes? Yes, we have. The Fitjar campus is actually quite near to the volcanic the volcanic activity. The Iceland people, my colleagues there, yeah, if you mention the volcano, they say, yes, that's one evening that was quite a spectacle. They actually go out there with the chairs and have some booze, they sit looking at the volcano, and then it's back to their, well, they're not easily impressed, and they're certainly not impressed by volcanoes. We thought that this would have a commercial impact, but what we saw is that some customers, they need capacity so badly that they, well, these slightly added risk that being near to a volcano adds to the equation. Yeah, it's not sufficient to chase them away. The Blunders campus is actually quite near near a hydroelectric dam at a completely inactive part of Iceland in terms of volcanic activity. There's also hardly any earthquakes there. And you see that's the biggest site that we have there now. It's already now doing more than 50 megawatts, and the expansion plans are in the order of magnitude of 100. Now these expansion plans are huge, and that's almost all of it is large language model trainers and fintech. The current customer that we have in Blunders is a fintech company. It's sad that I cannot give many details about what they're doing, but I'll try to paraphrase some of the lessons that I've learned in the few minutes that I've left for the presentation. Our Reykjavik campus, by the way, is the only facility that we have that's really tier 3 with all the standards there and all the ISO certifications. One of the things that you have to have for a tier 3 data center is 2 power feeds. If one fails, then you can use the other. But we can say for Blunders and for Fitjar that in the years that we've been operating them, they haven't had a single power failure. So what's the use of in terms of real time? A second power feed wouldn't have added much. For Kyani and Reykjavik, we are working for dual power feeds. But this is actually it's a piece of text that I looked for with ChatGPT. The reason why it's easy to cool systems on Iceland is because the temperature is, well, it's never been warmer than 25 degrees, which for Iceland is quite hot, and it also not often gets below minus 50. I think Mike showed a graph of the average winter temperature over EMEA, and then you see that Iceland is not in the dark blue ones where it actually freezes. So that means that you don't have to build cooling capacity that can go with 40 degrees a day, but you also don't have to provision things that if it gets minus 40 to not break stuff. Because minus 15 is cold, but it's not extreme. What we actually have to do most of the year is take some of the exhaust air and mix it into the cold air that comes from outside, just to keep it warm enough. I think we've got one customer that runs at 14 degrees centigrade there, and I've been told that you shouldn't go lower because of, well, things start to happen then. It is actually a nice picture. Most of Iceland actually is quite boring. It's a bit covered with green-gray shrubbery, right? And if you're into green-gray shrubbery, then you have a field day there. But these are the most exciting places where there's actually a geothermal activity. There's some mountains. What they've built here is a geothermal park that basically is about mining the lava streams underneath Iceland. So what I did not know previous to joining Borealis is that actually there's a lot of gases coming out of the earth as well. It's not just CO2, it's also other gases. So it means that the people that get energy and stuff from the geothermal site are also looking for a way to deal with those gases. And the very interesting thing is that they've found a way to store those gases in the ground, not just by pressuring them into the ground, but also at temperatures that we can do that they are quite easily. You can store them in rock in a way that it becomes permanent. I'll have a slide about that later. And also most of Iceland is connected out to a heat grid. So if you have a data center and you have some heat that you can give to the heating systems. Icelandic people have their heating system on most of the year, and in my house, for instance, I'm not heating my house now at the moment. I'm using the aircon to cool it down. I think we will switch on the heater next month, and we switched it off somewhere in March. So that means that more than half of the year, if my data center would be next to my house, I wouldn't be able to use the heat for heating my house. So this is the carb fix thing. So what they do is just they pump CO2 and hot water into the ground, and they're actually starts a chemical reaction that changes one form of rock into a different form of rock. It just happens to have more carbon atoms in it, and all of the other gases that come out of the ground. If you go to Iceland, you will smell sulfur, and that's also stuff that comes out of the ground. We can store it there as well. Although they're used to the sulfur, if you take a shower in Iceland, there's always a little bit of sulfur in it, so you start to smell like rotten eggs. After a few days, you don't really smell it anymore. So then a small piece about the network latency, and I'll brush through this. So on the left here, you see the network latency that Dr. Lacey has when he uses his internet. He's got Starlink, and he reaches 28 milliseconds, which I think is impressive. On the bottom is my link. I have a fiber link in my home, and my latency is 4 milliseconds. So the question there is, what is a low latency and what is low enough for HPC operations and for AI operations? It's not the same thing. But I have heard from two people talking to each other, where both are using a Starlink link, which shows a magnitude of 60 milliseconds. You can do normal Teams calls. And when I talk to my former colleagues in the States, I often have ping latencies of 120 milliseconds or more. You can still do Zoom calls then. There's no latency that you really see. I've asked many people in the industry that I know, so what's the minimum or maximum latency that you can deal with your HPC, your workloads? And I got so many different answers that I'm not even going to make a slide about it. What I am going to do is going to paraphrase what some of my customers told me, and I needed a map of Europe, so I thought, well, let's go to ChatGPT in Europe. I don't know what other people are doing, but probably there's a lot of people making Dungeons and Dragons maps using ChatGPT. This is not completely usable. So I just picked something from the web. So I've got many customers that have sites all over Europe or some all over the world, and they have to place their part of their operations in certain places out of latency reasons. It's quite obviously that you see 3 places where they have databases. This particular customer, and they are within, I think it's within 10 milliseconds, so they can do fully transparent data stores failovers, and those 3 instances form each other's backup. That's quite easy. We've all heard about content delivery networks, of course, and they won't go as close to most of the sites anyway. It's quite obvious that the model trading happens in Finland and in Iceland. Now, what most of the people in the industry expected, that there would be kind of an inferencing market where, for instance, in big players like Amazon would have inferencing instances close to customers. And one of my Russian customers asked me, Marcel, in any time when you were using your ChatGPT, were you worried about the latency? And I must say, no, I wasn't worried about latency, because that picture that I just made took about 5 minutes to come out of my ChatGPT instance. So it was not that I was waiting for the latency there. But my customers tell me that for large language models, they will do the inferencing or the generation in Iceland and Finland as well. What they're now currently looking to do is the instance that they have now for training their LLMs will be obsolete next year or the year after, and then they will use it for inferencing. Got 5 minutes, I can do that. What they did notice is that your authentication services have to be quite close, because authentication is constantly sending messages back and forth. So you want to have that near your end users. So what is the latency between our sites? Well, you see a 10 millisecond ping latency to Dublin, 21 to Paris. These are all latencies that, apart from algorithmic traders or high frequency traders and maybe mirroring of databases, I personally see hardly any workload that you cannot do over a link that has, well, to London is 14 milliseconds. Most of the UK will be within 15 or maybe within 20 milliseconds. So this is the, I asked Will, because I never trust marketing slides for definitions. I asked Will, can you ping the router in Kayani for me from several sites? And so which he did. So the slide dropped off a little bit, but you see from Oxfordshire, Belfast, it's within 60 milliseconds. I think he pinged also one from a system in the States, and that has 120 milliseconds, and just a function of the speed of light, where it's halfway across the globe. So it will probably have a higher latency anyway. But these are very good times. I still recall that I had a conversation at International Supercomputing about a decade ago with somebody from, what was that software called? That's now Amazon, Wise or something?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so which catered for latencies in your network when you're doing visual operations. And so we had a session running in Leipzig, where ISC was then, and they had a server down in the south of Italy. The latency was about maybe half a second or something, and it was still easy to use with that software. You missed a couple of frames every now and then, of course, but it doesn't work. Yeah, so for Kayani, which did I mention that it's where the Lumi supercomputer is located. It's connected to all of the large inter-academic networks. So I just sold a system to an academic customer in Holland, and they wanted to have at least 100 gigabit connections, and we could easily do that. And that's because, well, there's often data being shipped from Switzerland to Finland over those inter-academic networks, and they are, well, what comes out of CERN, it's hundreds and hundreds of petabytes of data. So the data that my customers are using is well, peanuts compared to what they do. But we kind of piggyback on the infrastructure that is there because of Lumi. Yeah, so these are the certifications that we have. Some customers think it's not important, some think it's hugely important. You can see the banks are appreciating this. Academics maybe less. Yeah, and because of the interest of time, I'll show you a nice picture of what Iceland looks like in the summer.